Hi, it's me again, A.F. Stewart, as you can plainly see, uh, with the little banner there. So I'm here today to talk about writing struggles, uh, specifically one I've had recently with the series of short stories I'm writing, and that I'm calling Shifting Series, Heyward and Andersen, which is basically what that series has been doing. Okay, so the series started out for me. Um, as with the third story. I wrote this story for an anthology way a few years ago, and the anthology never came into being. So I was kind of just had this story sitting around, and I liked the characters. I thought it would make fun little series, so I decided, well, yeah, let's write some more stories in it. And I sat down with the story I had written, and I realized, this is kind of the middle of their adventure, their journey. So I thought, well, it could use a couple more stories. So I sat down, decided to write a first story. So I sat down, wrote the story, and it just wasn't really happening. I wasn't getting the same uh, vibe that I had with the original story. I wasn't getting the same click with it, and but I struggled through it, and I got the story written down and finished. Wasn't overly happy with it. I sent it out to a couple of beta readers, and they gave me some good feedback on it. So I changed a few things. Realized, there were some things, and I thought I had at least a semi good first story when I was finished, but something about it was still bothering me. And so I sat down to write the second story, and that one was coming along so much better. It was flowing better than the first story, and I didn't get what was going on. So I went back and I studied the first story, and I studied it and I studied it. And then it just somewhere in my head it clicked that this wasn't the first story. That the story I had written was not their first adventure. At least that was what I told myself. So that was the plan. That was the first change in plan. So instead of having four planned stories, I was going to have five. So I made a list of what I was going to do. So Ghost in the Tower, that was what the original first story was going to be, was now the second story. The Headless Corpse was the third story, and Rivalry and Steam Monsters was going to be the fourth story. And then there was going to be a fifth story later on that I hadn't quite worked out yet. So I went to write the first story. And I titled it Scandal in Scarlet. I was going to do sort of like a blackmail, poison pen letter, strange lurking stalker story. And that's what it started out with. And again, once again, I was struggling with the story. I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. And so I wrote the beginning part where Lars, that's the Andersen of Heyward and Andersen, comes to London. I reveal his big secret past, and he meets Elspeth Heyward. That's the other half of the duo that are my detectives. This is a steampunk paranormal detective story, by the way. If you've watched any of my other videos, I've mentioned that before. And so I had them meet up, and I had them meet the client, which is basically the opener for these stories. It's kind of in the same vein of like Sherlock Holmes, only it's slightly more comedic and slightly more monstery. And so and again, the story wasn't flowing. I wasn't getting the thing. And then as I was looking at the second story, and I was looking at the new first story, I realized what was missing from each story is that I was right to begin with. The ghostly tower was the first story, but it needed the beginning meeting from Scandal in Scarlet. So basically, I took the opening bit from that story, put it in the ghostly tower, rewrote the ghostly tower to match it up, and added a bit to it And now that story works much better, and it's back to being the first story. And you can see now why I'm calling it the Shifting series, because it's been going crazy. And Scandal in Scarlet is now the second story. And then, so I finished The Ghostly Tower. It's up on beta reading on Story Origin. And I'm patiently waiting for feedback on that. And I'm definitely not checking it every day to see if there's feedback now. Definitely not. So I started writing the second story. And as I'm writing the second story, that one suddenly clicked as well. It's like the plot idea that I've been working on suddenly got an extra dimension, another character, and now ties into story 5, which is what I'm not going to talk about story 5 yet because it's little secret stuff. But so now it works perfectly. Unfortunately, the new storyline now gave the title I'd had, Scandal in Scarlet, absolutely no meaning whatsoever. So I had to change the title of that to Shadows in Scarlet, which works a lot better with the new storyline. So yeah, so that's what happens if your story isn't working, if your book isn't working, step back and take a look at it, because there's a reason why it's not working. You might be forcing something that shouldn't be, or you might be missing something that you need to add, and just keep looking at it, get feedback on it so you can see what's wrong with it. Just keep staring at it until inspiration, because it will come eventually. So anyway, and I'm going to give you a little peek at the covers here for the series. These are not the finalized covers. I still have tweaking to do on a few of them, but if I can find it. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, here we go. And these are the covers that are going to be for the first story, the third and fourth stories. I haven't quite finished the cover for the second story yet. So, and there's The Ghostly Tower, The Headless Corpse, and Rivalry and Steam Monsters. Those are the covers for the series. And there's going to be 5 stories in the Heyward and Andersen Consulting Detective series. And I will be, they'll be ebook only because they're short stories for the first 5 stories. And then once the 5 stories have been published, I'm going to be collecting them into a print version. A print version collection, and there will be a short 6 story in that print version, which I will probably also publish as an ebook separately once the print version is out. Anyway, and you in that story you will find the story of Lars's fiance, who he jilted at the well, not quite at the altar, but anyway, there's a story there, and it's going to be in the print book, and once the 5 stories are published. So that's the plan. It's finally on track. Of like, I've been struggling this for the past year, into 1st of February, and it's finally on track, and yay. So if you are struggling with a story, do not lose hope. Just keep plugging at it, keep thinking, keep figuring out the plot points, get your feedback, and sooner or later you will figure it out, even if it does take a year. So that's my advice, and I hope you enjoyed this wandering, rambling saga of Heyward and Andersen. And hopefully the first story should be out in a couple of months, barring any other problems with it. So that's all for now. Bye.